The case was initially brought to court on an emergency basis, a shelter basis. Melissa and her partner she had just given birth, and there was some questions about whether they were involved in substance abuse and the issues with their residence and medical decisions that they had made after Nivek was born. There were some struggles in the beginning. So we did a contested jurisdiction hearing. And during the middle of the contested jurisdiction hearing, Melissa and her partner were decided that they were going to admit what was going on, which was substance abuse, and really try to work on issues in the family. And so they were being evicted from their house and they were going from place to place. And so coupled with the contested jurisdiction and the housing and trying to get the substance abuse, it was, I had her, but I didn't always have her. Melissa she was right here, but she wasn't. And that's when I got Nicole.
The first thing I do with clients is I listen to them. I listen to their story, listen to it from their perspective. I don't read the documentation, all the things that come with it. I listen to them first, and letting her help me identify those, not stating what I'm seeing, but asking the client, what do you need? What do you need right now? What do you need in this moment?
It's kind of like the on the ground truth, like this is the line of defense. And in some ways it comes on and really helps to support the client in their perspective on all aspects, the legal issues, the emotional issues, the substance abuse issues, just human issues. I'm struggling. I can have the plan and the legal strategy, and we all know that's the legal goal. But that case manager that gets that ROI to that one person and follows up, like in this case, to frankly get a car seat for this child, that is how the child comes home.
I can say that, I can do a lot of things, but I don't feel like I would have been able to do all of the navigating on my own, because we really did have like every obstacle that could have been thrown in our way, anything that could have possibly happened. It did. It was really hard to have my child held over my head and continue to do the right things and just not get anywhere. So without them, it wouldn't have been able to happen.
Client was doing everything asked of her and then some, and yet at every turn it seemed like the system, the agencies, all of the other things that were happening outside of her were not working together to help her. And so just like recognizing those the adversities, recognizing the biases that are happening, saying, yeah, that I see it too, and this is how we can deal with it, overcome it, and work through it. I just kind of am the mega microphone for what they're saying, and unfortunately, one of the things that Melissa and I identified was that I could say the exact same thing she was saying. I could even say it word for word. But for some reason, coming from me, coming from her attorney, coming from a service provider, it had more legs. It seemed valid, and that's a problem. Mm-hmm. We definitely identified, but I think that's where I helped, especially in this particular case.
There was a point where I had expressed issues with my case manager, things that I was dealing with the whole of DHS, it felt like, and even things including stuff with my own mother that was being happening, and having them validate my feelings, and not only just let me know that these things were valid, but also standing by me and supporting me through that was something that that was where everything changed for me. One of the things, just even being able to get into a treatment facility and having assistance with housing was something that felt like it took it was pretty hard. And without them, without my like chemical dependency counselors, I wouldn't have gotten into the treatment. I wouldn't have gotten to have my son back in my care at all.
And so she worked a case with with difficulties, ups and downs, adversity, challenges, and she worked through them. So if she needed to go to a certain treatment class, she went through it and she didn't just check the box. She learned from it. But most importantly, when you're working with a system, you're working with a system in some ways that feels like it's against you. You're working with all different layers of the bureaucracy, the yes we can, the right hand not talking to the left hand, insert all the different levels of programming that are needed in order to successfully return a child. And so a parent that works through the system and navigates that maze and is successful is what Melissa did.
I still remember every visit I had with him. And I can remember people, one of the DHS workers that oversaw our visits saying that it was strange that I would try to keep Nivik awake during my time with him. And it's because I wanted him to remember me. Because I really um, thought I wouldn't have him. And so then when he did get brought back to me, like the amount of joy that I feel and love, it was amazing to have him back. And the drive that kept me going, having Nicole and Alexis behind me, as well as my other, I had a lot of supports by the end of everything, and I still do. But I felt for the first time that my son was actually going to be safe with me, and I didn't have to worry about somebody being able to step in and take him anymore. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to share even a little bit of my story, because there's a lot of parents that may not have the same team behind them or may not feel that way, because it took me a little while too, but just not to give up, because there are good people that are willing to have your back and help you and do want you to be with your family.
Nivik has this bond with his parents that otherwise could have with his age if he had stayed longer in care. If the parents hadn't gotten into a treatment or stable housing, this case very quickly could have gone the other direction. And so I think what's very important is that this team is able to get those things to happen sooner, which can improve outcomes for everybody.
I definitely feel like if everybody had access to this, things would be a whole lot differently. And that's part of why I got into the job that I am. I'm a peer wellness specialist now. I work with Mental Health and Addiction Association of Oregon, and that's my main goal, is to continue helping people the way I was.
Case was transferred to me from another law firm. There were a few other things, but the real main issue was the substance abuse history. And like I said, by the time I got involved, Jamika was well connected with her treatment providers, who consistently attended all of the meetings with us and consistently had positive things to say about her. So when I first talked to Jamika, I think she was super stressed, because the caseworker kept talking about adoption. It was not talking about, reunification, which was still the plan at the time. She had just gotten new housing. She was 3 or 4 months into her inpatient treatment program, and she was a rock star in her inpatient treatment program. And so my first questions were, why are we talking about changing the plan here? There were some complications from the beginning, and the agency did not fully trust Jamaica, and that was sort of the overarching theme that I started to see, that like we need to show the agency that Jamaica has been doing everything she's supposed to do, and that they should trust her. She had that trust relationship with Conan, and I think communicating between the two of them really helped her clarify how best to communicate with the agency and be heard by the agency, so that they could really see that what she was doing and what she was saying were in parallel.
And when I first met Jamaica, we sat down. Remember that conversation? We sat down and we talked for hours. And I got to know you. I got to hear your story. Kind of chaos around surrounding you, right? And as we moved through that conversation, Jamaica became very calm and centered and grounded. And I heard Jamaica speak. And the moment I heard that voice, I knew exactly what we needed to do.
Work with me, my trust was already so gone with the whole system, and I felt like I was very alone and I wasn't understood. So when he took the time to get to know me and talk to me without like prejudgment on what child services had told him or what he had read, it made me feel, it validated my feelings. I was doing so much and I was trying so hard to be seen and be heard and be validated. And I wasn't. I was getting overlooked. I was basically turning bitter with the system. And I was becoming this person who they already see me as. Like I was shutting down. I wasn't willing to even participate with or discuss certain things because I didn't feel comfortable. So when I met him, it was a blessing when I started to work with him, and he was my voice. When they seen him and my relationship and that our communication and that like, well, if he can work with her.
And then it was all about showcasing her strengths because she was already doing everything that she needed to do. We just needed to shake off that old story and remind everyone around Jamaica that she's doing everything she can. And if no one's going to listen to Jamaica, then we're going to create a chorus of voices around Jamaica's, so everything harmonizes. And that's what we did in the FDMs, and we were able to bring on the service providers to basically speak, and they were saying the same thing that Jamaica has been saying the whole time. And the moment those things harmonized, then things started opening up, visitation opened up, are talking about permanency, having the kids return and stuff, and it was great.
I trusted him, and I seen action.
I think there were times when we maybe were meeting twice a month. There were lots of meetings, and it was COVID, so all the meetings were happening online, virtually. And what I could see is in those meetings, Jamaica was working very hard, and you could see as she was finding her voice and feeling confident in being able to speak up for herself. At the beginning, she would really let other, like Conan, sort of offer ideas for her, but she really found her own voice. And I think from my perspective, that was really the turning point. And the agency was finally able to hear her speak with her own voice.
If it wasn't for him, I probably would have shut down, and it could have went multiple different ways.
I also knew from Jamaica that her kids were very motivated to come home. All of the visit records were very supportive of this really strong bond between Jamaica and these kids, her children. why don't you move them home and let them live with mom, which is what they're asking for. And it ended up being a little bit rocky because um, there were some difficulties in getting some of the benefits transitioned over. And so it was just a little rocky through December, but then by January, everything was transitioned and school was transitioned and the kids had all of their supports in place and Jamaica had all of the supports in place.
When my kids came home, it was, I had my, I had peace of my heart back. You know, my heart can fully function. It doesn't matter what the situation might look like at the time or the doubt that may be surrounding you. Just have faith in yourself and do the work, and you will get to the other side. Just don't get discouraged and don't give up. You know, this too should pass. And at the end, you have the best gift ever. You get your kids. Your kids is home.
So this case came into court originally for substance abuse allegations. Brian had struggled with alcoholism. He has 2 special needs children. He is an only parent. There were also some criminal charges pending because he got, I think it was neglect charges, criminal neglect charges through Clackamas County. His children were removed and they were put into non-relative foster care. They're pretty young and nonverbal, and so that was, and really were bonded to Brian, so that was a huge problem. I chose to engage a case manager because Brian and I were getting stonewalled. This foster parent was refusing to take the children to a lot of their medical, dental, special education type appointments. I'd gotten DD Services involved, and DD Services was also incredibly frustrated because they had assessed these boys and knew that they were special needs and very much disagreed with the foster parent and DHS that they didn't need to engage in these services. And Brian's main concern, of course, was making himself a safe parent for the boys, but he was also very concerned about the fact that his children might be regressing, that they might not be getting services. But I needed someone who could spend more time with him than I had. I needed someone who knew more about services. I needed someone who could connect children's services and the services that the children needed, the services that Brian needed. And to me, that was my case manager, Sean Cyrek. And
in the process of building the relationship with Brian and helping him understand and navigate the DHS system and all the other systems that are, involved with a case like this, like medical insurance and mental health treatment system, all that sort of stuff. What I do is I talk to the attorney. So I talked to Rebecca, and then I wanted to listen to Brian and figure that out so I could, figure out what was important to him and how we can make that work. The context and limitations of the system that we were involved in.
He became more like a mentor to me throughout this entire trial, the hearing itself. I could call him up. It didn't matter what time of day or night, and I could bounce ideas and say, hey, I want to know about X, Y, and Z, and this is what my concerns are. This is what makes me mad. This quite obviously pisses me off. What do you suggest I do about it? How do I do this the right way? He took the time, and it didn't matter when, to really hear my concerns, and he brought back a great one for me.
There really weren't any referrals like being made for any of the services that he was required to do. And the agency wasn't responsive to any of my advocacy, I tried to have Brian demonstrate that he could self-advocate well for that. And I think Brian and Rebecca and I were able to sort of meet, and then we just decided to do it on our own. So that was a little bit unusual, but we were able to get Brian referred over to all the different services for the court ordered services that were required of him, and then a lot of additional supports as well that weren't required.
Sean helped him write emails, outline all the services he's engaged in, compile a bunch of information about this is everything I have done. Sean and Brian dropped tons of information off at my office, gave it to me, brought it to me, and helped me understand the boys' medical needs. Having Sean help with that was absolutely instrumental.
It was like having a roadmap, like my own personal GPS in a sense. Obviously, I was the vehicle, but I had guidance along the way. I had to put in the hard work. I felt the same way with Rebecca, because I knew that when it came down to the legalities of it, let her do what she does best, you know.
If we didn't have Rebecca as like the teeth of this like team, like nothing would have happened. It would not. Rebecca had to jump in on several different occasions and just say like, line in the sand, like, you know, we're going to court, or if you don't.
We ended up having a shelter hearing finally so that I could get his children returned to him. I had mental health records. I had addiction treatment recovery records. I had records that Brian had provided me about the boys' needs. I had DD services available to talk about that. And it was because of the work that Sean did with Brian to help him with that. And of course, because Brian really did all the hard work. And he was so motivated to get his kids back. Easiest contested shelter hearing I've ever won.
It felt like a heavy weight coming off of my shoulders. The more and more that Rebecca advocated about increasing my visitation, she's like, this is ridiculous. He should have a lot more. Seeing how excited my children were during each one of the visits, it made me want to work even that much harder, because a kid can't fake that they miss their parent. I'm sorry, you know, kids are the most truthful in the world, and the most innocent. And seeing just how happy they were and how sad they were whenever they would have to leave, it just, I'd walk away and I'd be like, okay, I'm ready for the next time. I'm ready to do whatever comes at me. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get them home, because I knew how happy my children were. You're going to have to be strong enough to get through each one of the treatments, or whatever the said course of action is. It works. There are days that you're going to be tired, but the bond that you have with your children, the love that you have with your children, they don't forget it. You won't forget it, and it will make you a better person when it's all done.